The dailies with my panelists this morning. As usual, on Friday's youthful panelists, they tell us we're with Kenya at 60. J, unajivunia kuwa wa Kenya. And with me in studio, we have Moses Kilonzo, who's a chairman, Persons with Disability, Lower Eastern. We also have in studio, should I have started with ladies first? Okay, let me mix it up. We have Whitney Misheni, political economist and columnist. We have Irene Miner, human rights defender, and Gishuki Weru, the national youth spokesperson, the service party. Happy to have you guys in studio this morning. Irene Baridi. Eh? Yes. You are cold. Okay, sawa sawa. Daily Nation, let's take a look at the front page here. And this is the headline. Ruto, this is my promise to you. Transport plans to roll out an electric vehicle public transport system. Introduction of electric motorcycles for boda bodas. If I heard him correctly, he said September, was it? Health. Reform the NHIF, deliver universal health coverage, recruit community health promoters across the country. There's an echo. Jackson Durango is my director. Jackson, there's an echo in my ear. If we could kill it because it's distracting me a little bit. All right. On education, redesign of CBC curriculum ongoing. Plans to launch the National Open University. I'm good now. Thank you very much. Hustler Fund launched second phase of fund that will offer loans of between 20,000 shillings and 1 million shillings to registered groups. And I see an image here of the president at the Madaraka Day fete. And below this image, President William Ruto yesterday outlined his achievements in his 8 months in office, even as he made more pledges to transform the economy and shape his legacy. He also defended the controversial housing levy, if I may add, at length, saying it will deliver jobs to thousands of youth, and admitted the high cost of living was keeping him awake at night. So this is how it was covered on the front page of the Daily Nation. Shall we take a look at the other dailies? I see Irene smiling. I'll get your thoughts in a minute. Let's first take a look at how the Standard covered it. And speaking of cost of living, sorry, let me just save this pullout on, it was also on the Nation of the cost of goods. I may need it later. All right, Standard covered it this way. More promises as Kenya turns 60. President William Ruto yesterday urged the country to back his reform plan, saying the future can only be safeguarded through the measures he is putting in place, like housing fund and job creation. The highlights: affordable housing program aims to enable Mama Mboga access and afford a mortgage and embark on a journey towards home ownership. 2, prioritizing the processing and value addition of agricultural products. This is being achieved through the establishment of county industrial parks. Government has stepped up the establishment of 5 additional export zones in the next financial year in Sagana, Thika, Njoro, Eldoret and Busia. Boda bodas will be able to ride electric motorcycles by September to cope with the rise in international petroleum prices. 5, the government is committed to delivering universal health coverage that enables every Kenyan attain dignified healthcare at a minimal cost. And the National Open University will obtain its charter this month, and courses are being uploaded for commissioning. A combination of several images. Here we have the president, we have the Wananchi in inset, and then down here we have a monument of the Kenyan flag being put up. Okay, so this is how the Star looked at it. Let's take a look at how this is how the Standard looked at it. Let's take a look at the Star now. Let's give it a second. Here we go. It is loading, but I can be looking at my hard copy as it does so. Okay. Ruto, my plan will put money in your pockets, calls for patriotic sacrifice akin to the selflessness shown by independence heroes. Kenya puts aside its troubles to celebrate the 60th Madaraka Day. And I see an image here of the President, First Lady Rachel Ruto. We have an image of a traditional dancer here as well. The caption reads that President William Ruto, First Lady Rachel Ruto leave after Madaraka Day celebrations in Embu on Thursday, and Kagan Kochia, band leader, entertains guests during the celebrations. Yes, we had Nick Wambua interview him yesterday when we were in Embu. So let me see. Business, even Taifa Leo. How can I forget? How can I forget? Let's take a look at Taifa Leo, then I'll invite my panelists to tell me whether wanajivunia kuwa wa Kenya. Taifa Leo puts it this way. Silali nikiwaza uchumi. Rais aeleza mikakati ya kusuluhisha matatizo ya muda mrefu huku akinyamaza kuhusu changamoto za sasa. Silali nikiwaza uchumi. So that's the headline. Madaraka Day apigia debe mpango wa ujenzi wa nyumba za bei nafuu na mswada tata wa fedha. Pia aeleza mikakati ya serikali kuhusu ustawishaji, kilimo na kazi kwa vijana. All right, so Rigathi atetea mswada wa fedha wa mwaka 2023, but we'll get into the rest of it later. First, let me ask my Kenyans in studio, fellow Kenyans, as many speeches often began. Fellow Kenyans, munajivunia kuwa wa Kenya. And I will start, let me start from my extreme right, moving towards Moses. Let me reintroduce them just in case you've joined us and you missed it. With me in studio this morning, we have Moses Kilonzo, chairpersons with Disability Lower Eastern. We have Whitney Misheni, a political economist and columnist. Irene Minor, human rights defender. Gishuki Weru, I'm sorry Gishuki, I'm trying to mix it up. Next, I'll start with you. We'll move the other way. Gishuki Weru, national youth spokesperson, the Service Party. Irene, tuanze na wewe. Je, unajivunia kuwa Mkenya?
No.
What do you mean?
Okay, I have mixed
in some
feelings.
Things and maybe not in others.
I have
okay,
mixed
fair
feelings.
enough. For many of us.
Yes.
Yes.
I have mixed feelings because as a human rights defender, I also get to hear my community's point of view. When people were celebrating yesterday, I wasn't in the celebratory mood. And also having read or undergone political education, I don't see anything to be celebrating about. Maybe they are, but the biggest things that we should be celebrating, we haven't attained yet. So
you agree with the tagline that bado tunambali ya kwenda?
We still have a long way to go.
We still have a long way to go. All right, I get that. I know the Star said here that Kenya put aside its troubles to celebrate the 60th Madaraka, but Irene says she did not. I mean, it was she could not set it aside. All right, let's now hear from sitting next to her, the spokesperson, TSP, National Youth Spokesperson, TSP, and his name is Gishuki Weru. Gishuki, je, unajivunia kuwa Mkenya?
Na mimi najivunia kuwa Mkenya. I'm proud to be a Kenyan. First of all, because as you know, this is my motherland. This is where I was born. I was born in a village called Ikiraniro in Mihoti, Mokorini constituency, Nyeri County. This is my motherland. So I'm very proud to be a Kenyan because this is why even when I decide to marry, I'll still marry from Kenya, and when I die, I'll be buried in our country. But despite all the negativity that we have had as a country, we still stand out as a pillar in many spheres in our country, because if you look at our country, if you look from independence up to now, we are one of the, in our region, we are an economic hub, one of the biggest economic hubs. We are developing democracy. If you look at the other African countries and you compare them to our country, you can say Kenya is doing very well in an African gauging. So I'm proud to be a Kenyan. In our technology, we are doing very fine. If you compare with other African countries, that's what I mean. So I'm very proud to be a Kenyan. I can never say I'm not proud to be a Kenyan. We have some exceptions where we have had so many bad things happening in our country from our leaders. But after all is said and done, each person should be proud to be a Kenyan, and you should be proud of your nation.
We should be proud to be a Kenyan, I agree. But we should, ideally, are we living in an ideal situation?
If you don't look at the on the political side, as an individual, that is why I was trying to tell Irene, as an individual, the first thing as a person, as a patriotic Kenyan, or if you're Ugandan or Tanzanian, is to be proud to be of where you come from, and that is your country. So, mimi kujivunia kuwa Mkenya, najivunia kuwa Mkenya. We have some other disadvantages and all those things, but the first thing is I'm proud to be a Kenyan, and, and I can never say I'm proud to be from any other country. This is my motherland.
This is your mother. Kenya ni mama yako?
Yeah.
All right. Whitney, I'm curious, you know, do you agree with Gishuki that just because you're Kenyan, you should be proud to be Kenyan, or must there be a reason to be proud to be Kenyan? So first of all, let's start with, are you proud? Je, unajivunia kuwa Mkenya?
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning, Olive, and also good morning to your viewers. Yes, I am proud to be a Kenyan. I am a patriot, but I do believe that there are some issues that are still very pertinent 60 years later after our independence. In 1963, our forefathers singled out 3 things that they wanted to tackle, which they saw as major challenges to Kenya. We're talking about ignorance, disease, and poverty. When you look at 60 years later, ignorance is still a very big still prevalent among the electorate. I do believe that many electorates still beat like the education system. I'm not sure if it's the best, and also in terms of civic education, meaning political awareness, I'm not sure that Kenya is at a good place. Secondly, we're talking about poverty, eradicating umaskini, which as I've said, our founding fathers singled out. I do believe that we've seen the poverty index is still rising as the years go by, which is 60 years into independence. We see that we have the cost of living crisis. We've also seen that the unemployment is still very high among the youth also, and also we've seen that the people who have retired, they're still not able to sufficiently cater for their lives. And also, thirdly, we're talking about disease. The health sector in Kenya is not doing the best. We've had issues with NHIF. We've seen recently that people who have NHIF cards are still they're going to be declined when they go to the hospitals. We're also seeing issues at KEMSA. We've also had scandals where people are stealing drugs. Those are the 3 things that our forefathers singled out, and we're still battling those challenges. When it comes to democracy, I do believe that we're doing pretty good, but among the youth, I do believe that there's a lot of apathy. We saw in the 2022 general election, we saw the voter turnout was about 64%, and majority of the youth did not turn out to vote. So I do believe, as I've said in earlier, that there still needs to be a political awareness and also just civic education about to eradicate the ignorance among probably many youth and also many Kenyans at large.
All right. Whitney, how do you retain all that information? It's a lot of information, but good job, good job. Good case made there. I will now come to Moses, and Moses is the chairman PWD's Lower Eastern. Moses, you know, sometimes when you see these funny memes on social media and Kenyans say, Kenya sihami, wewe, could you be persuaded? Anyway, je unajivunia kuwa Mkenya?
Yes, thanks for having me. You know, Olive, I'm a student of history, and first I know that my country, Kenya, has the best economy in this region. So that makes me proud to be a Kenyan. The other thing, if you had asked me the exact question, the last Madaraka the last Madaraka Day, I would have said no. But today, I'm very much proud to be a Kenyan because one, when I listened to the speech by the president yesterday in Moi, Embu, I realized a few things. That one, we are in the right direction. 2, it's just a matter of time and we will be where we've all anticipated to be. Remember, we are only 60 years old, and any student of history will tell you any country in Africa suffers, or rather the masses have this erstwhile colonial mentality that we need to depend on aid from outside. But when I see my government trying to look for ways and means to sustain our country without depending from outside. It makes me proud to be a Kenyan. It makes me feel good to be a Kenyan. And let me point out a few things that the plans that the government is putting in place. It's good to understand that the first financial year, or rather the first budget by this government will be announced in 1st June. And so we cannot sit here and try to judge this government because we all understand how government works. And even though I know many people will say these are empty promises and all that, but I tell you the truth, Olive, failing to plan is planning to fail. And when you look at all the plans, they give me hope, they rekindle the Kenyanness in me, and I'm very much proud to be a Kenyan.
All right. I'll have to disagree with you on one thing, though. When you say we can't sit here and judge this government, I disagree because we pay taxes. And, yeah, and we are meant to be receiving services. So, as the customer, you know how they say the customer is always right? I am the customer. All right, let's take a look at what else the dailies, we'll come back with this conversation, but let's take a look at what else the dailies have in store for us. Daily Nation at the very top here tells us sugar prices make a bad economic situation worse. Average price of sugar has risen by a staggering 22.1%. Hope for suppliers, contractors owed billions as Treasury to table cabinet memo, and more on that is on the back page of the Daily Nation. I will quickly take a look at that, but first, Business Daily front page. State revives plans to lease 5 ports in 1 trillion shilling U-turn. Kilindini, Dongokundu, Lamu, Kisumu, Shimoni ports identified. KDC leading search for private investors. I remember some clamor about the privatization of ports before the last election. Let's see. Julian Zamboko and Dominic Omondi have penned this particular report. President William Ruto's administration will lease the operations and management of 5 critical ports through an ambitious 1.4 trillion shilling public-private partnership aimed at revitalizing the country's maritime industry in what appears to be a change of heart on a proposal by the previous administration. I remembered something similar to this, to hand ports to private investors. The Kenya Development Corporation, a development finance institution, has disclosed the Kenya Kwanza administration is scouting for private players to run sections of Kilindini, Haba, Dongokundu Port, Lamu Port, Kisumu Port, and Shimoni Fisheries Port. All right, more on that on page 2. We are told on the front page here of the Business Daily that we should flip to page 2 if we want to read more on this story penned by Julian Zamboko and Dominic Omondi. Anybody have anything to add to this particular one? Whitney?
I think when we're talking about privatizing or even leasing the state-owned enterprises, including ports, I do believe that it is a good move. It's a welcome move by the government, because we've seen that the private sector proves to be more efficient. It proves to be more effective in running of the businesses that the state is involved in. So I think this is a very welcome move, and now I think we can realize profitability when it comes to these ports when the government gets the hand out of it, because we've seen that the government at times it's not very effective or efficient in the ways it runs some of these state-owned enterprises.
All right. When the Uhuru Kenyatta administration did attempt something similar towards the end of its tenure, I remember Kenya Kwanza was up in arms. One saying it's the sunset days of this administration. 2, I believe there was an issue around transparency. And 3, the question of these are, I mean, does it, having foreign entities manage the ports, does it pose a threat to security or sovereignty or, you know, and all of that? So anyway, anybody else with a thought on this? Ishuki?
I don't believe in privatization of public entities, because one thing I believe is that I believe in socialism. I advocate for socialism, where I believe that the government, when you privatize public entities, it becomes a hub of corruption. And we have seen this in our country. If you look at
really, I thought it would cure corruption. I thought that's the argument.
No, you know, when you privatize, it brings corruption. The problem is that when you bring all these entities under the government, it's the people who are in government who are corrupt that advocate for this corruption. But when you have the right leaders, because each government, it has 5 years so that it can rule. If it is not utilizing these things very well, you have the ability to remove it. The moment you bring, if you look like a country like China or a country like Cuba, all these things are under the government, where the government owns everything. Even the land should be owned by the government. Because, yeah, the land should be owned by the government.
For certain state entities or all across the board?
I believe that almost like 75% of all of them should be, and I don't believe that the government should just make any public entity go to a private investor or go to a private entity. Because after a long time, these are the people who come and they make this their own entities. Because the moment you privatize these things, after some time, that is why you meet like a person, a certain businessman, a certain politician made this entity his or her own, or it becomes a family property.
Okay. So you're opposed?
I'm very much opposed.
Although they're not necessarily, in this case, selling them off. They're just leasing it out. Maybe, I mean, the argument, I guess, made by Whitney is to do with efficiency.
And effectiveness, and also profitability.
All right, Moses?
Olive, you know, Kenyans are not used to honest people running governments. So when you hear my friend complaining, you should understand him. But it's also good to understand that many economies in the world, okay, first, there is no one size fits all. What worked for China might not work for Kenya. It's also good to understand that there are so many economies which have been run by the private sector. For instance, the US is majorly run by the private sector, and it's doing well. So when we talk of privatization of state corporations, what we are simply saying is we need to inject some money. We need to get people to help the government run these entities efficiently, because it has proven it's proved over time that when government owns these corporations, they are not run efficiently. Even there's a lot of laxity in service delivery. So it's very, very much important that if there is a state corporation that needs to be privatized for efficiency and service delivery, it should be welcomed, and we should all be knowing that whatever is being done for the good of this country. But what I would urge the government is during the privatization, the people who will be buying these shares and all that should not be people maybe in the government, doing business with the government, maybe relatives or friends, or this should not be used maybe to reward political loyalists and all that. It should be open to every single Kenyan. We should be seen, or rather the government should be seen acting on behalf of the common mwananchi, not on behalf of the few elite.
Okay, on the broader conversation on privatization, I get what you mean. In this particular instance, I don't know if there are any shares to be bought, but let me just give some context to the conversation, looking at a bit more details. This is a quote of KDC, and that is, they state the ports are confronted with the challenge of congestion and therefore higher dwell times for cargo. The ports will be leased concessioned to private operators with landlord-type port management system, so leasing. And I see here Kenya's trade route has recently come under intense competition with the landlocked countries of Uganda, Burundi, and Rwanda, preferring to use the Tanzanian route. And official data shows that the volume of cargo handled by Mombasa Port dipped for the first time in 5 years, with players pointing to rising competition from Dar es Salaam. So I guess for many Kenyans, it's a question of transparency, that if any arrangement is being gotten into, then it needs to be very clear what the terms are. Okay, again, let's, unless, Irene, there's a time when Moses said Kenyans are not used to an honest government. Nilikono umeshika kichwa sikujua kama ni headache inaingia ama if it was that particular statement. But let me give you some room. We finish up with the papers, take a break, come back, right? So, Business Daily, electricity costs soar 67% in Ruto's first 9 months in office. The cost of electricity has soared by 67% in the last 9 months from a combination of higher fuel costs, currency depreciation, and the review of electricity tariffs. Trigger gives Galana land to new investors. Technology firm Trigger has transferred its rights at the 1 million acre Galana Kulalu scheme to Selu Limited for the development of 20,000 acres under maize production, and rising T-bill rates set the stage for costlier loans. I think at that point we would have gone through pretty much all the dailies. The only one I wanted to look at, let me just take a look at the very top here of the Standard. State steps up plans for 250 billion shilling euro bond. And I said we would go back to this one on hope for suppliers. Contractors owed billions as Treasury to table cabinet memo. Let's take a break. We'll come back and wrap it up.
Baby, calm down, calm down.
Dance along.
See my heart fall down.
So this is the sushi chef. This is the sushi chef. This is the sushi chef.
The lockdown will commence.
Come on!
In 5, 4, 3, 2.
Once you give it water, it expands. It grows bigger.
I hope you've learned.
El Shaddai, kona kile minadai, ulinipenda hata kama nisifai.
El Shaddai, El Shaddai, El Shaddai.
Crystal Rivers Residences, adjacent to the Nairobi Expressway. 3 bedrooms with master en suite. You and your loved ones will experience fine living. Furusha your landlord with our special offer of 50K per month. The future of fine living.
God is always engaged in our affairs. He's engaged in your life. He's engaged in the life of our community. He's engaged in the life of our church. He's engaged in the life of our nation.
What are the foundations of a good relationship?
Ale kwenye studio will be joined by the Riri family as they shed more insights based on their experience.
Your choice of a partner
is important.
Will shape your marriage.
Let's talk about love. This Sunday from 11:30 to 1 p.m. only on NTV.
This is Crossover.
To protect our family from germs that cause illness when it's cold, we use Dettol soap.
Dettol soap with germ defense gives you protection. When it's cold, germs are transferred in different ways, and Dettol soap's germ defense protects you from up to 100 illness-causing germs. Be Dettol sure.
No bunga pagi pendene lace the mystery. No bunga to browse on flick the mystery.
Nobunga mnika na next week ni mistering.
Only on the trend at 10 p.m. The Trend in association Techno Come on 20 series.
This week on Twende, we are in Migori. I get to experience the Migori sunrise. I get to learn how to clean the inside of mtungi.
Ongeza maji kidogo, maji kidogo. Oh.
Muhuru Bay, the place time left behind. Have you ever heard of Mamweni, the uninhabited island in Migori that has a dark secret?
Crystal Rivers Residences, adjacent to the Nairobi Expressway. 3 bedrooms with master en suites. You and your loved ones will experience fine living. Furusha your landlord with our special offer of 50K per month. The future of fine living.
Cascadia Apartments at 2 Rivers Development in Nairobi with a Madaraka offer till 30th June 2023. Price start from 9.2 million. Call us today on 0742 342 722 or text Cascadia to 22365.
Hakuna kujivunia kokote, ni shida tupu. Kwa sababu tu ni Mkenya ndio niko Kenya, lakini kama ningekuwa si Mkenya mimi hata singekuwa Kenya. Kwa sababu maisha ni magumu. Pesa zile unazopata na ile vile unavotoa haiambatani. School fees za watoto ziko ghali. Chakula kiko juu. Hakuna kitu najivunia, ni shida tupu, navumilia tu kama Mkenya.
Kulingana na historia mahali watu wametoka ni mbali. Bali tunaomba serikali isitu kuangalia mwananchi wa chini. Sababu mwananchi wa chini iwapo atainuka vile tunafurahia bottom up, lazima tuanze mwananchi wa chini. Akishiba tayari kidogo maisha itakuwa mazuri, lakini hasa mwananchi wa chini amesaulika sana.
Tuko na uhuru kama Wakenya, tunaweza kuongea mambo yote ambayo yanatuhusu. Ukiwa na jambo lolote ambalo unataka kuzungumzia hapa Kenya wakati huu, unazungumza bila kushurutishwa na mtu yeyote, bila uoga wowote.
Tuko na matumaini mengi sana kulingana na vile serikali inavyoendeleza mipango yake. Kwa hivyo mambo ni mengi ya kufanya kuwa ni umefurahia kuwa Mkenya wakati huu.
Najivunia kuwa Mkenya, najivunia kuwa na hiyo Madaraka Day ya leo. Pia tunashukuru kwa yale magumu yote ambayo tumeyapitia. Pia hizo hali ni ngumu, uchumi uko juu. Especially kama sisi watu wa road tunaumia.
Tunatarajia kwamba aangalie sana juu kuhusu gharama ya maisha, apunguze vitu, ushuru watu walipe, lakini vitu zingine ziweze kupunguzwa bei.
Tuko najivunia kama Wakenya, maana maisha haikuwa mzito hivyo. Lakini kwa sababu ya serikali iliyopita na hii serikali sasa hii, hatujivuni kitu hata kidogo. Maana maisha imekuwa mazito, sisi wenyewe kukula ni shida, kuvaa nguo ni shida, maana maisha imekuwa ni magumu.
Tunafurahia, lakini bado tuna the same time tuna huzuni. As in vile mmejua iko ni public domain, hali ya maisha imekuwa ngumu. Mambo imekuwa ngumu, vyakula vimekuwa bei ghali, mafuta yamepanda bei. But we hope hii Madaraka itatuletea angalau nafuu.
Kwa Kenya najivunia kwa sababu tukisema tuko na miaka 60 tangu tupate uhuru, bado tuko kwa mashida. Sasa hata watoto kukula chakula ni shida, kulala ni shida, kila kitu za kusoma ni shida. Sasa kama kuna Madaraka Day kwa sababu ni mashida juu ya mashida hii. Na nilikuwa nikiomba kwa nikisikia kwa hotuba ya rais kwa dhani atasema ili atateremsha gharama ya maisha. Nilikuwa nikisema itateremka, lakini itateremka bado inapa kila wakati.
Kwa miaka 60 tujawahi faidika kama wana Kenya, kwa sababu wakati tulifukuza mkoloni kutoka kwa nchi hii tulitaka tujitawale sisi wenyewe, but the same wenyenye wenye wameteka hii nchi wamechukua, wanatunyanyasa sisi watu walio chini.
Sisi wananchi wa chini tutaumia sana, kwa sababu kama saa hizi tumeanza bado tunalia saa hii. Sasa wakikawanyisha tutafikia kiwango gani? Wawaje serikali ikuwe ni moja, lakini kitu ambayo mimi ningelipenda kuomba Mr. President ajaribu kuangalia mwananchi wa chini, kwa maana huyu mwananchi wa chini ndiye amefanya yeye akafika mahali hapo saa hizi.
All right, actually let me tweet that one. Unajivunia au unavumilia kuwa Mkenya? I will swear it. Join the conversation, please. Respond there. And actually, let me ask our digital team to tweet it, and then we can all respond there at NTV Kenya. You can also tag me at oburrows. 1 quick second. The gentleman who is on the digital desk this morning, and we are all digital first, though. It's called Marvin. Let's see whether he will take my call. He should be watching, so he should know I'm calling him. Marvin, shikasimu. But because I know you're watching, put this question down. Maybe he's feeling shy. Put this question down, please. Hi, Marvin.
Hi.
You're on the desk?
I am.
Please tweet this question. Je, unajivunia kuwa Mkenya au unavumilia kuwa Mkenya?
So.
Thank you very much. So, we will share your replies in the course of AM Live this morning. But this is how Taifa Leo put it yesterday. Miaka 60 ya mahangaiko. Kenya inaadhimisha miaka 60 ya kujitawala leo, huku raia wakiendelea kukabiliwa na matatizo tele ambayo viongozi waliopigania uhuru waliahidi kuangamiza. And we heard from a section, cross section of Kenyans, and we'll continue with the conversation because I know we touched on it at the very start of this discussion. But quickly, there are two stories I wanted to look at, and one was on the back page of the Daily Nation, and Treasury to table cabinet memo on pending bills. PS says there is a plan to form a multi-agency team to pursue the clearance of debts, and I know many people who would be reading this would be breathing a sigh of relief. 407 billion shillings is the amount that state enterprises owe contractors and suppliers in pending bills. 160 billion shillings is the amount that counties owe in pending bills. These are staggering figures, and I see Edwin Mutai. If we can just take a look at a little bit more detail, then he writes, the National Treasury will next week table a cabinet memo outlining mechanisms to clear the 641 billion with a B owed to contractors and suppliers. All right, the other story I wanted us to quickly touch on and is this one, page 24 of the Standard. State steps up plan for another Eurobond to pay 269 billion shilling loan. Treasury says it is one of the options on the table to source funds for debt that falls due in June next year. This is an external debt service that is projected. To increase to 475.6 billion shillings in the upcoming 2023-2024 financial year. The National Treasury on Wednesday said it is considering different options to settle the $2 billion loan, which translates to about 269 billion shillings at the current exchange rate, that is due for repayment in June next year. These include using the proceeds of another Eurobond to pay the investors who lent money to the government in the first Eurobond that was floated in 2014, or taking multilateral loans which are cheaper. The Eurobond, which falls due next year, has significantly pushed up the amount of debt that the country is set to repay in the next financial year. And I can see here they've stated that the Treasury Principal Secretary Chris Kipto said the external debt service is projected to increase to 475.6 billion shillings in the 2023-2024 financial year, up from 242.1 billion in the 2022-2023 financial year on account of the Eurobond. The National Treasury is an advanced stage, is quoted as saying, of procuring lead managers to provide advisory services in the next few weeks. So I don't know what that means for you and I, Irene. Blow for farmers as milk prices fall by 40 shillings over surplus, and that's the other story that is there on the front page. Okay, so that's what I wanted to look at, but it still informs the discussion. Kenya at 60 with a heavy debt burden. Your mother, Gishruki, as you put it, your mother is carrying a heavy load of debt.
Our country is facing a lot of debt crisis in our country, but this is something that has been a trend in our country. If you look at the previous government, we had a lot of loans which were taken by the government from the IMF and other Western countries. And if you look at what was being used, what the money was being used for, it's not something which we can be proud of. Where we meet that the country is borrowing a lot of money, but when it comes to utilizing it, most of the money is going to the pockets of a few individuals. So I hope that what the president said, that he doesn't want a lot of debt in our country, and he wants to tax to get the money from our taxes, is something that we should be proud of. Because any moment that you are taking tax from other countries, it's just like the way the missionaries came. Now they have come in another way of giving us loans. So the moment as a country you take loans and you take a lot of debt, it is a disadvantage to the country. So you meet that these loans are paid by the sweat of our parents at home. It's paid by the sweat of our youths. So it is unfortunate when it comes to our debt crisis. I hope this government will walk the talk, as the president put it, and make sure that we don't get a lot of loans, just like we did in the previous government. I hope that what William Ruto said, and I hope and I believe, I want to trust him, we are going to give him time, that he will not be like the previous government of just taking any loan and coming with it in our country, and it is not being utilized well. So I hope that what you'll be taxing us will be used correctly, and we are not going to find ourselves in a debt crisis which we cannot be able to get out of it as a country.
I'm sure the former president would take issue with you saying any loan, them taking any loan.
It's true, only because if you remember the last regime, all the loans that we were taking, if you check, and I believe that very soon we are going to find to know the truth, is that we took a lot of loans, and these loans this money found itself in the pockets of few politicians, few individuals, few businessmen. If you listened the other day to former presidential candidate Jimmy Wajigi saying about the railway which was going to in course to nowhere, you find that this is money we took, but overpricing of these projects with our money, and which we are going to pay. I think this money is going to be paid in the next like 20 to 30 years. We have to pay, and this is why even the countries that have loaned us money, they are taking some of our national assets so that they can pay their loans.
Who are these?
You know, the countries that loaned us money, the IMF, the China, and all these countries.
Who are taking which assets?
Yeah,
we know very serious.
We know the pause. You know, we all know people who are
very serious.
Yeah, we know the people. We know the people who are controlling our pause. We know the people who are controlling our trails and all these things. It's not surely the Kenyan government. They are being controlled by outside these Western countries, which have given us loans so that they can be able to repay themselves. Iko chini ya maji, but the truth.
Wacha tuachane na hiyo. Aya, sawa. Marvin, my good friend, Marvin Lukulu has posted that question on Twitter. Je, unajivunia kuwa Mkenya au unavumilia kuwa Mkenya? Taja sababu zako. I've retweeted it. Y'all have your phones? Are you on Twitter? Please retweet my dear panelists this morning. But now let's get into what the president said yesterday, because your generation perhaps cannot speak entirely to the last 60 years. But looking forward and having listened to what the president said yesterday, are you optimistic? Do you have any suggestions for him? Because there has been this public participation, and he referenced it yesterday, especially where this housing levy is concerned. And I know Irene is particularly keen to get into that one. But what did you make of his speech yesterday? I'll start with you, Irene. In general, did it infuse you with a sense of optimism for the next 60 years?
No. First, let me speak on what he said about the last regime. When we talk about the last regime, it was an Uhuru Ruto regime. So the Ruto is still he was still there. He is still here. and saying that the previous regime was taxing, was loaning and doing I don't know what, channeling money into, and the money was going into other people's pockets. The same is still happening. What is 50 CASs? Why do we need 50 CASs in a country that is economically crippled at the moment? You get? So I am not optimistic because he said that, not yesterday, but a while back, he said that he's taxing us to save for the future. What future do we have? What if we die of hunger tomorrow, the next day? What future do we have? What is really the priority of our Kenyan government? Is it to build us houses? And if it is to build us houses, where? How? Why? Okay? If sikuli silali, nikifikiria uchumi, is really what is happening to the president, then I don't know why he's saying that, because if the economy ama uchumi na the high cost of living was his priority, that is the agenda he will be pushing instead of the house levy and the finance bill and all that. He will first tackle the issue of food security in our country. So no, I'm not optimistic. I'm really worried as a Kenyan of where we are headed, because what we are investing in as Kenyan, or what the government is investing in, is not what really we need as of now.
I'm curious, on not investing in food security, they have subsidized the cost of fertilizer. They're getting into private-public partnerships, they tell us, to build more dams so that there is water to ensure our food security. Those actions don't strike you as addressing food insecurity?
They've subsidized the cost of fertilizers. But there was a conversation of introducing GMOs in our country.
Yes.
My question is GMO the way we want to go? And if truly all this that you've said, Olive, was really a way of attaining food securities, kuna mahali umesoma when we were reading that there are cries from farmers, like
the cost of milk?
The cost of milk, there is no food. You see, we also have the issue of climate, you get? So, mimi nikienda ushago kama sai, sawa? How we were producing a while back is not how we are producing now. Even if the fertilizers are subsidized, you get that these fertilizers zenye zimekuwa subsidized, they're not reaching all the farmers ama nini. You get venye the government will release hata tuangalia hata pesa za PWDs, sawa? Nikiangalia kama kwetu in Dandora, pesa zikikuwa released the PWDs hazifiki PWDs wenye wako mashinani. You get, they will rotate upper juu. You get, kuna farmers who cry out that easy fertilizers, they've been subsidized.
You mentioned PWDs, niko na masikio za Moses zimeenda shwe.
But hazifiki.
So, unasema subsidized fertilizer haifiki wakulima. I must ask you that, are you a farmer? How do you know?
I come from a lineage of farmers, so I have conversations with, I also have friends who are ecological justice warriors. They really are in the fight for ecological justice. So we have these conversations, and that is how I know that I don't think it's working.
Maybe it's a work in progress, you know.
Maybe.
Moses.
Maybe.
Yes. Before I get to what she has just alluded to, allow me first to share my thoughts on the debt issue in Kenya. Now, it's good for Kenyans to understand that the situation of the dollar in the world is really disturbing economies. In that, if, for instance, we borrowed X amount of money when the dollar was at 90 Kenya shillings, today the dollar is at, and you know, we get all these loans in dollars. The dollar today is at 130 something. I think 136 if I'm not wrong. So as days goes by, the debts are becoming too expensive for us because of the situation of the dollar. Now, that is what I wanted to point out. Now, to get to what she is trying to say about farmers and fertilizers. One, Olive, farmers are being urged to register with the to register with the government to get these fertilizers. She's coming from a lineage of farmers, and I'm not sure if she has made a call to her siblings, wherever they are, or family members in Ushago, to try and tell them, go and register with the government to get this fertilizer, because the fertilizer is not being brought at home when people are seated. Now, let me get to your question, Olive, about the speech by the president yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one, on the house levy, the 3%, there's something very important that I wish Kenyans would see in this 3%.
Mm-hmm.
If you listened carefully to the president asking if our freedom fighters asked what was there for them to fight for the freedom of this country, we would still be under colony today. Now, with that in mind, and you know, the people who are asking these questions, why should I care about a person living in Dandora and I worked my way up and now I'm living maybe in Runda or somewhere? You know, that is a poverty mentality. Why should a country, for instance, like United States, care about a country like Kenya when the president of a country in Africa declares maybe famine as a national disaster? Then we see countries from outside giving relief food to such countries. Why then should they do that? Of what interest? It's because there's something about human beings in the world that we should be our brother's keepers. And this is what has been lacking in our Kenyan context.
Okay.
One,
I will have to ask you to press pause so that I can also get Whitney's thoughts on the same.
Let me just finish
because
this point.
Ukianza 1, Najua 2,
Yes,
3,
yes.
4,
No,
5.
Okay, let me just finish this point then. What the president is trying to say is that you are giving the 3% to give jobs to people who do not have jobs, to help the country widen the tax base, because the people who are getting these jobs are will be paying taxes, and again to help the country, you know, alleviate the standards of living of certain people who are in the slums.
Elevate?
Yes.
Okay. Whitney, your thoughts generally on the speech. Did it infuse you with a sense of optimism for the next 60 years?
Thank you, Olive. First of all, on the issue of housing levy, we can see the president is very spirited in pushing this, despite the public outrage, because I think the housing levy boils down to two things. First, trust deficit, and second, income, the issue of incomes. First of all, when we talk about the trust deficit, we're talking about, we know that the government has constructed houses in the past, but it begs the question, who actually are the beneficial owners of those houses that are constructed? We're seeing that when the president says he will deduct 3% from the employee, 3% from the employer, people are still asking themselves, who will actually benefit when these houses are constructed? I think Kenyans know, like, there has been no accountability in the houses which have been constructed in the past, so they're a bit cynical in this whole housing conversation. Secondly is the issue of incomes. We know that
We know that NHIF has been increased to 2.7%. We know that NSSF has been increased to 6%. Now we're talking about the housing levy. We have pay, we also have VAT when we're buying goods. So we know that majority of Kenyans earn less than 100,000. And also we also see that once we're deducted all these taxes, we still have black tax. We still send up our parents' money, we send them to our relatives. So I think this whole thing is about income. I don't think Kenyans' incomes have risen to the place where you can say they can afford 3% to go to the housing levy, and also putting the employer in such a situation. I think when you put the employer in such a situation where they have to deduct 3% to remit for the housing levy, I think this will cause, I don't think that the president understands the labor sector, because I do believe that the employers will actually stop hiring people. They'll probably just be consulting them informally, because I don't think they want to go through that burden of paying 3% to the government for all employees that they have in the sector. So I think this, first of all, as I've said, it's an income thing that Kenyans, we know that the salaries have been eroded because of inflation. The cost of living is high, and I've said all those taxes that are still paying. So I do think that Kenyans think that this is an issue of timing. They don't think that this is the right time to deduct an extra 3% from the meager earnings. And also, as I've said, there's no accountability on who has benefited from the houses that were constructed in the previous years.
All right. I'm curious, Gishuki, did you feel that, because the president did reference this trust deficit in his speech, he said, yes, Kenyans want to know whether my money will be secure, whether my money should be contribute this, although because he was speaking like it's a foregone conclusion that he will be parting with 3% on your pay slip. But do you think he sufficiently addressed those concerns by Kenyans?
I think that I would rate that out of 10, I would rate the speech 6 out of 10, because I think the speech, the president tried to make the speech emotional and to get the feelings of Kenyans, because he took us all the way back in 1963. And you know, when you are taken back to those days, you remember about our forefathers. So I think he did very well, and I think that what he said, he is going to walk the talk. And I think when he said about the trust issue about Kenyans, that's an issue with Kenyans, because it is true. We have seen there before where Kenyans, their taxes are taken to do something, but it does not happen. So, but he said that public officials, that is the people who are mandated to control our finances and our taxes, that they make sure that public finances are utilized solely and exclusively for the purposes that serve the interest of the people. And that is what he was saying. In short, he was saying that he will not condone any corruption in his government. I hope he will do so, because we have heard before where our government said that they are not going to condone corruption, but when corruption happened, we saw otherwise. So I think that I think the speech was good in talking, but I hope that the actions are going to go with the speech. That is what I would say. And I think when you talk about the housing levy and all this, I think it has a lot of disadvantages. But if you look at in the other side, and if you look about what he calls the hustlers or the youth, he said that this housing levy is going to give the young people a lot of jobs, so that it can put a meal on the table of the hustlers, where you are going to meet, these houses are going to be built by youths, are going to be built by Kenyans. These are children who are in the streets, who don't have anything. So I would say, I hope what he said is going to become true, that these young people are going to get employed so that they can build these houses. These materials are going to come from Kenyan shops, which is going to help them in a big way. And I hope that finally it will become a success in our country. Because I'm just wishing him all the best in this. I think it's a good idea. It has happened in other countries. And if it is put well in our country, if it is utilized well, and what he said is going to become an action plan, I think it is going to be one of the best things that can happen in our country.
Okay, Irene, there's something that was said just now by Gishuki, and he said the president tried to pull on our heartstrings, you know, when he said, you know, if the freedom fighters said that how is this going to benefit me, then we would not be celebrating 6 years of Madaraka. What did you make of his statement?
First, I disagree with us celebrating 60 years of independence. Our forefathers fought for land, food, and freedom, right? But still to date, there are people who are homeless. There are people who, like, when you look at the fire at Sinai, I don't know what year that was. The people who still live in tents. There are people in Mukuru Kwanjenga who still live in tents. There are people in Kariobangi and NY. These demolitions that were happening that rendered people homeless have actually rendered the fight of our freedom fighters for land, food, and freedom really so low. And as for pulling to our heartstrings, he knows how to do that, by the way. He appeals to our innermost beings. When he goes to a congregation of Christians, he knows how to touch your hot spots, your soft spots. But then again, I think that as Kenyans, we should look at what our government officials say on a deeper level. If he is saying that that if the freedom fighters asked at ikitu itani benefit aje, we wouldn't be. But then again, if something is not for us, why shouldn't be with us? Like, kama hatufai kuuliza like ikitu itatu benefit aje, because I'm so sure hata yeye ujiuliza in the morning like nikiamka, how does this presidency benefit me? We need I think our government needs to actually listen to the people and listen to what they want. Okay. So many people have come out to the street. There was a day I was in town, I think Juicy, and trade unionists were demonstrating.
Right. I will have to ask you to press pause, Irene, but we will come back with you because there's a caller on the line. Mnajua bei ya nini imepanda? Bei ya bundles na credit. No, I'm kidding. I don't know. But Muturi, do submit your comments this morning. Je, unajivunia kuwa Mkenya au wewe ni kuvumilia? Muturi, you can go ahead.
I'm saying 50-50 because let's face it, a lot of good things have happened. Not everything is bad. Now, we must put a lot of energy in positive areas. We always have problems, but this focusing on the problem, let us now focus on solutions. Let us hear more of the solutions than the problem, because again, everybody in the world is going through problems. But in our country, when somebody has done something wrong, it's not them, the wrong that they have done. We should not glorify wrongdoers. If somebody has done something wrong, they have done something wrong. So what should be happening? We have thousands of reports from the Auditor General about how money has been going to wrong places. What are we doing about it? There's too, like you talked about spending bills, Are we still together?
Yeah, we are. We're listening.
You said something about pending bills. If you know how these projects are done, they are vetted, the money is set aside. How does it come to, how does it come to pending bill? And the money was budgeted for in the first place. So these are the things that we need to correct. Let things be done accordingly. If something is approved, put the money where it should be done, it will be used. If you look at our country, we have got fantastic roads all over. These roads have taken money. Why are we not saying that? Why are we not appreciating what has been done? From Mombasa to Kisumu, fantastic roads. Let us be proud of those small things so that we can have energy to move on. Thank you, Madam. I've been trying to get you for a long time.
And I appreciate you making the effort. Good to speak to you this morning, Muturi. And we take your comments on board this morning. So Irene, I stopped you from before you finished your thought, but and then I'll invite you guys to weigh in on what Muturi said. But Irene, conclude.
I was saying that the government should really listen to its people. The people don't want the finance bill. The people don't want the house levy. And the finance bill is introducing the house levy, tax on baby formula, sijui paying, kama if ikipita, sijui kama unaendesha gari, you pay per seat. You see, that is not right, because already the Kenyans are really suffering, and ukiangalia kama mashinani, like the common mwananchi are really struggling to keep afloat. The rates of suicide cases that we see in our areas are really, really high. And if the president really had us at his heart, he will first solve what is pressing. And then maybe let him make the basic commodities really affordable and accessible to people before introducing us to house levies and all that he wants to introduce to us.
All right. So I need us to take a break, but before we take the break, let's take a look, and then we'll come back with what Muturi had to say, that we must take the good with the bad, otherwise tutakosa nguvu ya kuendelea. So let's see here. Marvin tells me, and he's called the king, we call him the king of dry jokes. In fact, if you go on Instagram and search for him, you'll see, you'll find him at Marvin Lukulu, and the king of dry jokes with a crown there. But he's told me I'm being elitist by excluding Facebook from commenting on this issue. So I will also go through comments on Facebook. Let's take a look at those first before I take a look at the ones on Twitter. There is, okay, what am I doing here? Okay, I will figure it out. Here it is. 922 comments so far on this subject. Kimondo Gabu says, najivunia kuwa Mkenya. Let me expand this. Let me see. Can I expand it? Yep. There we go. Jackson, can you see this from where you are? Okay. Najivunia kuwa Mkenya despite the hard economic times. I'm sure that God placed me in Kenya for a purpose, and for that I am grateful. Hard economic times won't last forever. Kenya nayo siku hizi ni kuvumilia. I remember when half of the citizens applied. Really? Did half of the citizens apply for a green card to the US and Canada? Hiyo ilinipita. Who is this? This is Ben Sill. Musa Luceno says, in Kenya, I remember the book title Detention Without Trial or Suffering Without Bitterness. And this one by Omariba Gideon. You know that meme of Uhuru Kenyatta saying Hasora at so he references that, and then he says, I remember this statement like yesterday. And then this is Prince Nduti who says, tumetega, tutahakikisha, tumeamua, tumeweka, tumepanga, tutalete, tumekubaliana, tume. Meanwhile, hatukusema tutaleta electric bikes, tulisema kila Mkenya atawekewa stima. Let's see. I remember Uhuru asking Kenyans, who knows Ruto more than him? This is Sam Sirma. Then Michael Mark Mutuku, before I go to Twitter and we take the break, says, leo kwa mat nikienda job nimesema tu aki hii Kenya. We ile siasa imeanzishwa kwa hiyo mat. Mpaka wengine walikuwa wamevalia earphones, wamezitoa akajoin the conversation. Hadi dere akapak kando tuongea about the state of the nation kwanza. That must have been a very interesting matatu ride. Let's see Twitter, a couple of comments here. This is Pana says, I'm proud to be a Kenyan. Only a person acting blind will not see where we are coming from. Some optimism there. And George Asiko says the other day they were shouting at the top of their voices that Uhuru sold the port. Conment. So he's referring to that Daily Nation report that has been filed by Julian Zambuko, Dominic Omondi as well. And Asha Mahamud says, navumilia kuwa Mkenya. So I will take a look at more of your comments, but because we must also pay bills and there's a proposal to increase the tax on advertising, wacha tubebe adverts. We'll be back with more.
healed that lady, that woman of 12 years of bleeding. He's here today. The same supernatural healing that took place at this time, today it is taking place in Jesus' name. Bible says it's the same yesterday. Jesus the same yesterday, today, and forevermore. I prophesy to you. This is your day. This is your hour. This is your moment. Receive your healing in Jesus' name. Can I hear somebody say more fire? Somebody shout cheese. Supernatural
healing. It's the headquarters of good vibes. So I should just kneel and begin to call on Jesus because I'm a bishop.
You know, Dr. Kingori, yes, you sound like a street fighter. Where did you grab it? Unataka noma.
Kingori, let me tell you something. Mimi mtu angenipata saa hiyo nikiwa first year. Angeangukia bibi mzuri.
You know, they always say smart women, where to catch them is with love.
Kingori, I love how your suit looks. I love you in a suit. I love you in a t-shirt.
As in any example, ama you actually mean that? Maifungua akili ya msee ama kichwa ya msee ukapata vile watu husema huyu jamaa ana akili.
Tunaweza toa nyama kwa huko nyuma tuweke kwa
kifua. Sisi mtu anakuwa na roho chafu sana. Na ukidive inahesabiwa?
Si ndio, ukiwin, udive win, si umewin.
Hiyo ndio tizi unafaa upige. Napiganga tu tizi ya 90 meters ya kwanza, alafu nikifika 90 meters na fly. Every Friday on NTV 7:30 p.m.
Wicked Edition in association with Showmax.
I invited Robert today for my sisters to meet him.
Hi! Wait a minute. I know that beard.
The CA Kuza Broadcasting Awards 2023 is here. Vote for NTV for the Kuza People's Choice Awards. SMS the word Kuza to 15601. Follow the prompts and press send. Voting is absolutely free. Cast your vote for excellence in broadcasting. The CA Kuza Awards is an initiative of the Communications Authority of Kenya. NTV, turning on your world of local entertainment.
This week on The Trend.
I'm like, no, no, no.
As usual, the Trend Trio, that's Osoro, DJ E, and your host, me, Amina Rabah, will be there to start your weekend right. The Trend, every Friday only on NTV.
The Trend in association with Spotify.
Babe, have you heard Dance Holding by Uncle Jing Jong?
But have you heard
Have you heard?
Have you heard? Spotify has over 100 million songs.
Cascadia Apartments at Two Rivers Development in Nairobi with a Madaraka offer till 30th June 2023. Price start from 9.2 million. Call us today on 0742 342 722 or text Cascadia to 22365.
All right. Welcome back. All right, guys, we're back. We're back on AM Live. This heated debate began with the comment on Facebook, the guy who talked about the electric motorbikes, and I was remembering yesterday I was listening to Radio Jambo on my way back from Embu, on our way back, the crew and I, back from Embu, and they said, they joked that maybe, you know, the president will come back and say, I didn't promise electric motorbikes, I promised helmets. So yeah, because Irene had raised the issue of the cooking gas.
When Ruto told us that by now we will be the cooking gas would itakuwa imeshuka, and then akakuja kutuambia ni I did not say, nilisema ni mtungi ya gas. I don't understand how our president will anaweza tuambia hivyo, I swear. I can't.
All right, so let's move this conversation forward in the direction that Muturi urged us to, right? Okay. So solutions. So we've looked at what was contained in the speech. What did you expect to hear is where I want to move us along to. But first, because after this, we have what we call convergence of TV and radio. So after this, we'll have the morning fix team that's coming in about 23 minutes or so. So they've asked this question: what would you have wanted to hear from President Ruto? Expand this. At yesterday's Madaraka Day celebrations in Embu. So this is pinned to our @NTV Kenya Twitter handle. No, NTV Kenya has retweeted. Have they pinned it? Have they pinned it or they just retweeted? Okay, looks like they've retweeted it. But the post is from Nation FM KE. So what would you have wanted to hear? 1, changes to finance bill. 2, reduction cost of basics. 3, I have no expectations. Other, tell us. So I'll start, Irene. Between what would you have wanted to hear? Changes to finance bill, reduction cost of basics, I have no expectations, and other. Where would you vote?
The second one.
Reduction cost of basics?
Yes.
All right. 43% of Kenyans, actually majority, say this. Let's see if we can vote again. I'm refreshing. Let us see. Here it is. We will not be allowed to vote again. Okay. Either way, tell me. Gishuki, changes to finance bill, reduction cost of basics. I have no expectations. Other.
Okay, obvious reduction of cost of basic things.
So you're with this 43%?
Yeah, I'm with them.
Okay. 100%. How about you, Whitney?
I would go with changes to the finance bill. I do believe that there's been a lot of public outrage on some of the proposals in the finance bill. We're talking about 8%, which is being increased on the cost on the VAT for fuel. We're talking about the housing levy, which is at 3%. We're also talking, thirdly, we're also talking about the issue of access to justice when he says you must deposit 20% to KRA when you have a tax dispute. I think that's a very contentious issue. So I do believe that the president, if there are no changes and if he shoehorns his parliamentarians, Kenya Kwanza parliamentarians to pass this, I think this will be very tone deaf of the government. It will prove that the government is callous and heartless in that they don't care about what the public is saying. So I do expect that there must be some amendments to that finance bill. But also when we're talking about, I also think change some prices in the basic commodities is necessary. We're talking about the cost of electricity. When we hear President Ruto say in his speech that he will introduce e-bikes, electrical bikes, and of course they're going to move away from the petroleum bikes, I do believe that the cost of electricity is still very high. We saw that April that the tariffs went high, and also once you increase the VAT on fuel, the electricity prices are still going to become higher. So when we're talking about e-bikes, they're not going to be as affordable as probably people expect it to. So it's going to be like it won't be of any benefit. We can see that he's trying to champion the whole thing for climate change. We've seen him going the way of renewable energy, green energy, but the cost of electricity is still very high. The cost of fuel, once that VAT increases to 8%, that's going to be unbearable to Kenyans. So I think there are very many issues in the finance bill and the cost of living that they must be checked.
All right. How about you, Moses? Which way would you vote? These are your options. So the question is this. What would you have wanted to hear from President Ruto at yesterday's Madaraka Day celebrations in Embu? Your options are changes to finance bill, reduction cost of basics, I have no expectations, other.
In the sense that I would have wished that the president would have elaborated on the 3%. like when people pay the 3%, where exactly is the money going? Who is the custodian? Who, like when now after 7 years, one wants to get back their money, where exactly do they go to get that money from? Like he would have shed light on that to just get doubts off people's heads. But what I expected is what I'm hearing from my friends here, because I pity Kenya Kwanza government, because it came into place in the backdrop of a very tough economic times, and people who are despair, are people who are hopeless, people who have been exploited by the previous regimes and all that. And so to trust what this government is promising, it is becoming hard and harder. So I would have expected the president to get into the depth of that, even the Hustler Fund, to explain to people the monies that are for savings. When you get the Hustler Fund, there is some amount that you are told that is for saving. Where is exactly that money going? How do people get back that money if they need it? So shedding light on such things will increase public confidence, and so that is exactly what I expected.
Right.
Yes.
Irene, other than these options, because I know they only gave us 4 options, but what did you expect to hear from the president? You know, it was like a State of the Nation address, so to speak.
I think my response will still revolve around
reducing the cost of living?
Yes. That is what I expected to hear, that he will give priority to what Kenyans really, really want. I was on Twitter, on NTV, and I saw Zipporah was addressing the president, and he told him, stop beating your chest, Mr. President, and listen to Kenyans. That is what Kenyans want.
Let me pull it up.
They want their president to listen to them. They want their president to actually listen to what they want. The fact that Kenyans are coming out to cry out that they do not agree with the finance bill, the president should hear that. Because he says he's for the people. He calls himself a hustler like us, you get. So that is what I will say, to stop beating your chest and listen to Kenyans. Listen to what they want. Let that guide what maybe he's planning for the future. Yes.
Okay, how about you, Gishuki?
Okay.
And I've pulled up the article. You can project it, perhaps?
Okay, I expected the president to tackle issues mostly about tribalism, because it's something that is not doing well in our country, because you find that in our current administration, something that happened has been happening all the way from the first administration, the second, the third, and the fourth administration, is that even in this administration, we have seen tribalism when it comes to the appointing authority, where you find the appointing authority is appointing people from a certain ethnic group, and you find that it's like 2 tribes which are controlling the government, and the other tribes is just some sprinkling of some allies from the other tribes, but almost you meet that 60% of the people who are controlling our government are from 1 tribe or 2 tribes. So it's something that I expected him to talk about, because as a country we have like I think 43 tribes in our country. It should have representation from all the tribes. Another thing I expected him to tackle very well is to talk, like literally tell us what he's going to do about corruption in our country. Because as Irene said, our president is very good at talking, but I hope that this time round, what he said, because if we take him with what he said, we can trust him 100%. But the problem comes to walking the talk. I hope that he is going to give us a reality of how he can tackle these things of corruption. And one thing I expected him also to talk about is about our social ethos. And the other day I was reading the Daily Nation, Nation Africa, and I liked a quote from the Daily Nation from you guys, which was given by the first president of Kenya, Jomo Kenyatta, on June 1st, 1974, and I want to quote it. And our first founding president said that any government with a responsible approach to the evolving national interests must always pay attention to the future of the country's younger people. We have looked upon education as a fundamental human right while recognizing the need to prepare young people for the day when burdens of responsibility will be theirs to carry. So I expected the president to tell us how his government is preparing the young people of our country who seem to be very disappointed with what is going on how he is preparing them to become responsible leaders in the near future. And because all of us are young people, I expected him to give us a way, a very clear way on how the government, because he wrote on about the youth, and most of the people who elected our president are young people. I expected him to give us a good way or a good path on how he is preparing the young people to take the responsibility of this country in the near future. That's something that I expected him to say. And about what my sister here said about what we said about, I think it was about ignorance, poverty, and disease. I expected our president to talk about. Those are the three issues that Jomo Kenyatta in his inaugural address, the first address as President Jomo Kenyatta, these are the issues he identified about ignorance, poverty, and disease, as my sister put it. I expected him to tell us as a country, how are we going to deal with ignorance, poverty, and disease in the fifth administration of this country.
All right. I have yesterday's Daily Nation here. Was it yesterday's Daily Nation that you read the quote from?
Yeah, I think yesterday or the other day.
All right.
Yeah.
I will find it. I will find it. But this was the front page of the Daily Nation yesterday. Remember, you can find even archived copies of the paper on epaper.nation.africa, Kenya's original dream, Kenya at 60. Mbali tumetoka mbali tunaenda. And inside, from page 2 to 3, original sin, time to break the jinx. The jinx, let me see, minimize so I can make sense of this, of our founding fathers. And the statement on top of that is that Kenya has suffered one scandal after another since it became independent, with every regime hell-bent on extracting as much as it can from public coffers. And I saw following page, and this is page 4, an article penned by Oliver Madhenge, from Jomo's Uhuru na Kazi to Ruto's bottom-up outlook at a glance. So dissecting the ideological nuances in Kenya's body politic from the early years of nationhood to the present day, these philosophies have played a crucial role in shaping country's governance and aspirations, governance policies and aspirations. A quote here: at inception, Kenya's political philosophy was rooted in the ideals of Pan-Africanism and the struggle for liberation from colonial rule. And I will ask you just in a few minutes, after I hear from Moses and Whitney on what they expected. Whitney, did you already address this question? What you wanted to hear? No, you did. No. Okay, so once they address that, I'll ask them before we close the show what they thought about the presence of the Nigeria's former head of state, Comoros head of state, and the wider discussion around Pan-Africanism at this point in time. But first, Whitney, what did you expect to hear from the president yesterday?
Thank you, Olive. I expected the president to be more elaborate on the issue of unemployment. Unemployment is a very big crisis in Kenya. We have seen about the daily is quoted it about like a month ago at 3 million, but I do believe that they grossly understated that that figure. I do believe that many youth are unemployed. Actually, even people who are above 35 are unemployed. And also when we're seeing the government talking about eradicating drug and substance abuse, I do believe that that is a symptom. The disease is actually unemployment. We're leading a hopeless nation. And also when the president just talks about unemployment, when he talks about the housing levy, when he says that the youth will be employed to probably provide doors, provide windows, I expected him to talk about also we have other Kenyans who have graduated from the TVETs, who have graduated from universities. Universities are churning out hundreds of thousands of graduates each and every year. So there are also other fields where the youth must be absorbed. I expected him to talk about incentives to the private sector, be it taxes, be it over-regulation, reducing the taxes, or also just giving them tax breaks on some issue, on some of the taxes, so that they can absorb more people in the the employment sector, because we can see that the public sector does not, the government's job is not to employ people. So I do believe that the president still, there's a big loophole in how he's tackling unemployment, because what I'm seeing him navel gazing on is basically just this informal jobs, as I've said, housing, probably just this informal jobs. He's not very keen on bringing in the private sector to talk about how they can absorb many youths, and also just creating industries, creating manufacturing hubs. When we see the president increasing the cost of electricity, increasing taxes, and also all the business environment is not very friendly, and also just increasing the turnover tax on also the in an informal sector, I don't believe that he's bringing in incentives for people to probably get into self-employment or also to be employed by the private sector. So I do believe that the president he's still yet to address the issue of unemployment very critically, because I do believe that that is the biggest crisis in Kenya.
Okay, but this affordable housing plan, I almost said scheme, a plan, but it's scheme can have many meanings. Not aimed at addressing that, because that's what he said. This will create 1 million jobs a year.
1 million jobs is not sufficient in the current economic. The many Kenyans who are unemployed is just not 1 million, and also that's just one sector. That's just the housing sector, the real estate sector, where you have to have some specific skills. There are many other Kenyans who have different skills. We've seen people who are graduating from TVET, people who are also graduating from universities with different skills and also just different qualifications. So there's no way you can just shoehorn everyone into the real estate market. And as I've said, there are many other qualifications, and people are graduating with many other degrees. So he must just open the whole scheme open, just not navel gaze on one thing, which is housing. And also, I don't believe that those jobs are sufficient to absorb everyone.
All right. Yes. And if you're doubting Whitney Amesoma, Meskia Shuhon, I've had it like twice now. No, it's not what I hear often, but the good stuff. Moses, what did you expect to hear?
You know, Oliver, I'm seated here wishing that today's newspaper was yesterday's newspaper. Because when the president was addressing the nation, I would have run to him holding this newspaper and handed it to him. And just for him to use that example that you've read there about the milk. Now that there is surplus of milk, the prices of milk have gone down.
Yes.
To just elaborate to Kenyans that this is exactly what I've been saying when I say I'm subsidizing fertilizers to increase, or rather to enable farmers to increase food in Kenya, food production in Kenya. This is how it will go down. The prices will definitely come down. And that is a newspaper that is not originating from the government. So at least today, Kenyans can see what the government is doing. Now, what I expected the president again to touch on is the issue of unemployment. Now, the government has very good plans and very good intentions on the youth, but unless the president stands and explains everything explicitly to the masses, it will be so hard, because, you know, we are a political nation, and Kenyans like politics, and they follow their political leaders. So without explaining these things, the president is giving a leeway to the opposition to you know, say there is nothing that is being done and all that. And because I know we are going into Pan-Africanism, can I just go into that directly?
No, actually, because I'm saying we only have 4 minutes to go. So I'm going to put a pin on the Pan-Africanism one. But I know export of milk was big when he was campaigning, and he was saying Kenya has a capacity to export milk to other countries. But Irene, your last word this morning. Perhaps you can tell us what you thought of the Deputy President's speech, because the President is not governing alone. Does he have the right team behind him to fulfill these promises to Kenyans?
I'm going to talk generally. When Gachagua, our Deputy President, Rigathi Gachagua, speaks, I really fear for our country. And I'm like, that is really our Deputy President. Can I not talk about that and give something else?
Go ahead.
The callers told us to look at solutions instead of complaining.
Yes, Muturi.
When we look at maybe the housing project that Ruto wants to implement, how about not taxing Kenyans and actually repossessing trillions of money that have been looted from this government, from the people who looted? There was a time when Kidero was a governor, there was a scandal that he had looted. I cannot substantiate, but there were also stories of Rigathi Gachagua looting money before he was the president. He was the deputy president. How about using those tax billions that were looted to actually implement this housing bill or whatever that he wants to implement? Like, instead of coming for the little that we have, how about going for the millions that the millionaires and billionaires have that they actually looted from us as Kenyans?
All right. That would be complicated, though.
I know.
Because you would have to go through a court process. And you said Gachagua, he was taken to court. The charges were withdrawn by the DPP, who's now up for the job for NIS Director General. But then, you know, people did go and reclaim, what was it, Kondo, kwa shamba ya Uhuru Kenyatta. So that's a whole other conversation. But Gishuki, your last word? Okay. Does the president have the requisite support behind him to achieve his agenda?
I think the president has the right people, like 80% the right people in his government. If they do what the president is telling them to do, I think that he is going to accomplish most of his goals and most of his missions. But one thing I would like to say, because we were talking about the 60th celebration of Madaraka Day, is that something that I observed about Madaraka Day and about our country is that our founding fathers, after the 3 issues that they raised, the other social ethos, they came in our national anthem. And I was looking at in our country, each and every day at 6 a.m., the flags of our country go up and we stand still, so that as we sing the national anthem. During Kenya's most proudest moments, when our sportswomen and sportsmen are being given their medals, we sing the national anthem. So I was looking at the national anthem, and I was asking myself, do we really subscribe to what we sing in schools or to what we sing about the national anthem? And one thing I realized is that as a country, in our national anthem, we ask for blessings upon our land and nation. And truly, God has blessed our land and nation a lot. Then we go to say about justice, be a shield and defender. Is it happening in our country? Is justice our shield and defender? Is justice being given to the people? Then we go and say, may we dwell in unity, peace and liberty. Are we dwelling in peace, unity and liberty as a country? So those are some of the questions we should be asking ourselves. It goes on and say, let one and all give with heart and strong and true to find a sort of bidii. And it goes and says that let us stand firm and defend our country. And the last thing it says is that fruits of our labor fill every heart with thanksgiving. I hope that the fruits of our labor, as we sing in the national anthem, are not going to go to the pockets of few individuals, to the pockets of corrupt officials in our governments. Let us live with what we sing in our national anthem. Let us not just sing each day during public events, but we don't subscribe to what is being said there. And lastly, to say that I will leave the conversation with this quote that says that each generation has its own mission and vision to accomplish. It's up to them to fulfill it or to betray it. The other generations that were there before us, they did their part. As a generation and as a youth, we have our own mission and vision to accomplish, and I hope we are going to accomplish it. And I have a lot of greetings for you, Olive. I have been asked by my party leader, Honorable Mwangi Kionjore, to say hi to you, and our CEO, Aboy Kimadi, they have said hi to you, and they are very proud of you.
All right, thank you very much.
Wambia salamu zilifika.
Asante sana.
All right, Whitney, 30 seconds.
Okay, you asked the issue about, you asked us to comment on the speech of the Deputy President. I do believe that the Deputy President must be a statesman. He was a bit divisive in his talk during the Madaraka Day speech when he termed everyone who was opposing the finance bill as Azimio sycophants, or also when he said that the media is also just, you know, being an arm of Azimio. I think we need to look at the finance bill objectively. There are many bad clauses, there are many bad proposals, and it doesn't have to term everyone as an Azimio sycophant. I think that's very divisive language, especially on a national celebration. To finish off, I would just, in the spirit of Pan-Africanism, I would just like to say that Africa must unite or perish. I think we all must come together, especially when we're talking about the African continental free trade area. We must trade within ourselves. We must open the borders. We must remove the regulations. We must remove the bureaucracy. We must improve our infrastructure to ensure that we trade amongst each other on a larger scale, so that we unite and we don't perish.
All right, Moses, 30 seconds.
Thank you. My 30 seconds, let me dedicate them to Pan-Africanism, because I feel this is a very important topic. Now, Olive, just 2 weeks ago, I happened to come across a video of an African trying to cross the Mediterranean Sea, and was taken back, and he explicitly said, even if you people take me back, I better die in the Mediterranean Sea, but I don't want to go back to Africa. And I asked myself, this is your motherland. What is it that Africans are fleeing from Africa, but we see Chinese coming to Africa? We see other young civilizations coming to Africa. What is it that they are seeing in Africa that we Africans are not seeing? And it reminded me of the May 1963 at Addis Ababa, a speech made by Kwame Nkrumah, and he told his congregation that that very day that they should not come out of that place disunited, because if they did so, the erstwhile colonizer would still be alive and well, and that is exactly what is happening today. And so the spirit of Pan-Africanism is very important. And what we saw yesterday, the head of AU coming to grace the occasion, really rekindled the Africanness in me. And what I would urge this generation is to embrace the spirit of Pan-Africanism.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So it is Friday. So I do now have to make way for the morning fix. You see the question they were asking today. The cost of living was what a lot of their voters thought the president should have spoken more on or addressed more significantly. My name is Olive Burrows. Let me remind you who our panelists have been this morning, and thank you so very much for being here. We have Moses Kilonzo, Chairman, Persons with Disability, Lower Eastern; Gishuki Weru, National Youth Spokesperson, the Service Party; Whitney Misheni, political economist and columnist; Irene Minor, human rights defender. Lovely photos, all of you. My name is Olive Burrows, and I leave you the first stanza of the national anthem. E Mungu nguvu yetu, ilete baraka kwetu, haki wengao na mlinzi. Good morning.